I'm happy to introduce our speaker for today, Lilly Hagen. She's a graduating senior from Northwest School of the Arts, and she's been involved in one way or another in our community for about 13 years. During that time, she's been involved in many activities. Some of the volunteer work she has done is she has been a teacher of 4th and 5th grade religious education classes. And she's also worked on Operation Sandwich and a number of other things too. But so she will speak to you for about 20 minutes. And then during that time, if you want, can write questions in the chat function, which is on the bottom of your screen, usually in the middle. And even after she's finished, you can continue to write questions. But one caution, please be sure to keep your questions in the form of a question and try to keep them brief, because she's going to be reading through those questions and reading the questions to us and then answering them herself. So Lilly, I believe that's it. I'm going to turn things over to you.
Good morning, everybody. Before I start, can everybody hear me? Okay. Do I sound good? Okay, awesome. So good morning, everyone. My name is Lilly Hagen, and I've been at the Unitarian Universalist Community of Charlotte since I was 5. Joining the Unitarian Universalist community at such a young age made me tremendously impressionable to all of the lessons and real-life examples of how to use my faith to do better in the world through lessons that were taught to me every Sunday. When I first started attending Sunday school classes, I was quite nervous. I had previously attended a Lutheran church, and the lessons that were being taught to me in that space were drastically different from the ones I was beginning to be taught at the UUCC. One of my first, and to this day, fondest memories of my early UU life was when my class learned the 7 Principles song. If you don't know this, it's a song sung to the tune of Do Re Mi from The Sound of Music. It was simple and fun, covered all 7 principles, and each principle had a coordinating color of the rainbow. I was so excited to be learning new things at a place that shared my same mindset. It was a refreshing change from the previous church setting I was so used to. I think a notable difference between the UUCC and the church I had previously attended was that at the UUCC, I was able and encouraged to think for myself. I was encouraged to ask questions and be curious, and I finally felt like I was my own person. As I was growing up and progressing through the religious education program, I slowly began to realize most people in my community and the world around me did not share the same beliefs as the people within my UU community. Internally, this juxtaposition of having to politically assimilate during the week was incredibly harmful to my psyche. On Sundays, or in the comfort of my home, I was able to express my feelings and opinions without fear of being judged or reprimanded, because the people I was surrounded by, for the most part, felt the same way I did. I think in a sense, this made it just that much more difficult to try to fit in when I was not in the comfort of my home or church community. Outside the walls of my home or the church, I was careful not to preach my political opinions. Whether this was at school, during sports practice, or casually hanging out with my friends. I was slowly beginning to feel ashamed of my religious beliefs. Not because I felt I was ignorant or closed-minded, but because when questioned about my religion, most people had no idea what a Unitarian Universalist was. Moreover, what we believed. So frequently, I would be asked, as a community, what do Unitarian Universalists believe? On the rare occasion I told someone the truth about my religion and explained to them as a community what we believed, I was met with confused looks, snide remarks, and the occasional snarky laugh. I felt incredibly ashamed and embarrassed because all I wanted was to fit in. I wanted to feel like I was part of something bigger than myself. But every time I attempted to share a personal aspect of my life with my peers, they were not accepting. These types of questions always seemed to make me extraordinarily nervous. Not because I did not know the answer, but because I was apprehensive to hear the other person's response. As a result of my nervousness around the subject of my religion, I began to lie about it. When people asked me where I went to church, I would say things like, "I don't remember the name of it," or "You probably wouldn't know it." If I was asked what I believed in, I would say things like, "I'm not sure yet," or "I think I believe in God." I continued this narrative of lies for years. I slowly began to realize that living in the South, people will automatically assume that you believe in God. I was not interested in confrontation concerning my religion, and I was even less interested in not fitting in because of it. The more I lied about it, the worse I felt. But somehow, it was still easier for me to lie and avoid an awkward conversation than to be truthful and ruffle a few feathers. While I was starting to stray away from the truth when having conversations about my religion, I began not wanting to attend church at all. It became increasingly harder for me to separate my church life from my social life. And I thought if I wanted to fit in with my peers, I needed to spend as little time as possible at church. These thoughts came in early middle school, which is really the time you start to form those connections with other UU youth that attend CYRE every week. I had no interest in doing this, so I stayed to myself. I did not talk to people I did not already know, and those I did know, I hardly ever interacted with. As I began to grow older and the world around me changed, my mindset began to change. The first big red flag that signaled I might need to rethink my external behavior was in 2015. The Supreme Court had just ruled in favor of Obergefell v. Hodges. My mom and I joined our fellow congregants at a church in Plaza Midwood to celebrate this momentous occasion. I remember feeling two very distinct but different emotions during the celebration. I remember pulling into the parking lot and the corners of my mouth beginning to ache because I was smiling so hard. I was so incredibly happy, but I couldn't exactly pinpoint why. Obviously, I was relieved that queer people all across the country finally had the right to have their marriages legal and recognized on a federal level. But it felt deeper than that. I did not know why I felt such joy in that moment. But now looking back, I realized it was one of my defining moments in figuring out my sexuality. I felt such immense joy because the country had reaffirmed the belief that I held that everyone was equal, and that as a young, closeted gay woman, when I was finally ready to live my full truth, I would not be punished by my government for it. On the flip side, I felt an incredible sense of sadness, like I had a giant lump in my throat constricting my airways, making it difficult for me to breathe. I felt like I was doing myself and my community a disservice by being so passive and not using my faith in the real world to contribute to the betterment of society. I wondered how I could be so shallow and disrespectful to myself and to others around me. I was angry at myself for betraying what I knew was right out of fear of uncomfortability or confrontation. I felt I needed to make immense behavioral changes. I just did not know how. So, instead of doing the difficult thing that was working to change my behavior for the betterment of myself and all those around me, I continued to lie. The situation came to a head in November of 2016. My family had been following the 2016 presidential race incredibly closely. Throughout the final days of the race, we had coverage playing everywhere we could. We watched it on the TV, listened to it on the radio, and read about it in the papers. As a 13-year-old, I was inspired to see a woman running for the highest political position in the United States. I went to bed the night of November 8th, 2016, feeling unsure but hopeful. I was woken up the next morning by my mom, and her first words to me were, "I'm sorry, buddy, but he won." I immediately fell to a puddle of tears. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I could not understand how a man with so little political experience and such hatred in his heart could have won. I went to school that day angrier than I had been in a very long time. That same day, I had an encounter with a boy in my class who was an avid supporter of Trump. I remember him telling me that the only reason I was upset was because I had been brainwashed by Hillary Clinton and the left into thinking Donald Trump was a racist and a sexist. Additionally, he said the only reason Hillary and the left had to come up with this conspiracy theory was to cover up that woman's shady emails. I had finally had enough. I told him he was an idiot, and I was actually concerned about having my rights taken away and erasing all of the progress the country had made in the last 8 years under the guidance of the Obama administration. It was during that confrontation that I realized how damaging my behavior over the past few years had been. By being so passive and refusing to stand up for what I knew deep down was right, I was allowing people with opinions similar to this young man to not be questioned or challenged on their beliefs and harmful opinions. I again had these feelings of shamefulness and remorse because I felt I was not doing my part as a Unitarian Universalist or just a decent human being by not fighting injustice. After some reflection, I realized that in order to change my internal monologue and begin my process towards fighting injustice and making my voice heard, I needed to reconnect with the place I first found my voice: church. I began reattending Sunday school every week and participating in various other activities with my peers. I began to fall back in love with the place that held such a special place in my heart for a prolonged period of time. As I was beginning to edit my moral compass and standing up for what was right, I began to realize why I was so fond of the church in the first place. It wasn't because my friends were there or because Freeman Hall always had really yummy snacks. It was because being surrounded by a group of people who were not afraid to challenge my beliefs or ask my opinion about a certain topic made me a better person. I was able to think critically, ask questions without being scolded, and exchange in meaningful and abundant conversation. Refamiliarizing myself with my Unitarian Universalist community helped me regain the confidence I had once had with my religion. The UUCC provided me with a safe place to land. In case anything should happen and I needed a friend to lean on, they were there. Reconnecting with the UUCC and beginning to use my religion in everyday life to make the world a better place was the best decision I could have ever made, and I could not be more grateful to be a part of a community like ours.
I see people applauding side their hands. I'm not surprised. Thank you so much for your and your how articulately you explain your journey. We're all really grateful to hear from you. And now I am hoping we have some questions in chat. If you will check that and see if they give you some more things to talk about. Uh-oh.
Oh, that's a good question, Jay. I think if I could send a message to 13-year-old Lily, I would just say that, I don't know. I think I would tell her that it's okay to feel confused and conflicted, but to understand that you can always go back home and you can always find your community again. And I did that, but I did it a little later than I would have liked. So I think that's what I would tell her. 21-year-old Lily, I don't know. That's very tricky. I think I would tell her to just keep doing what you're doing, keep with it. It's proven to be impactful and meaningful so far, so hopefully it does more for you. What's one way I'm trying to make a difference in the world now? I think a big one is this, again, this is going to seem broad, but just not letting people get away with saying incredibly awful, racist, terrible stuff. I think that that happens because those people who have those opinions are not challenged. And by calling them out and maybe asking them to explain or just give clarification, it sort of helps them to not be so awful. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that's what I'm doing to make a difference in the world now. What do you see as a major challenge today and your role in it? I think a challenge that I see today is people have the mindset that the work for justice is done since we have come so far and we've made all this progress that there's nowhere else to go. We don't have to progress any further or get any better. And that's just not accurate or true or correct. We still have work to do. We still have to fight. And by becoming complacent and just sort of backing away, taking your hands off and saying, I'm done, I've done my part, that's all I can do, we're not actually getting anywhere. what are my plans after graduation? What am I excited about after graduating? What feels daunting? My plans after graduation, I will be attending University of Lynchburg in Virginia. I'm very excited about that. So that's my big thing. What am I excited about? I think I'm excited about just sort of being my own person, living by myself, being able to just sort of be independent. Not that I'm not able to in my own home, but it's different when you live by yourself and when you're in a different space, in a different town, and a different everything. What feels most daunting? All of it. It all seems very scary, and I know I'll be fine and I'll get through it, but I've never done something like this before, and there's so many what ifs. I don't know. Do I consider myself a humanist? Yeah, I would say I do. Are you willing to share a bit about? Yeah, okay. So last year, as we know, after the murder of George Floyd, protests broke out all over the country. And since I was home and not doing anything, not going anywhere, it was important for me to be at the forefront of that movement, not just because it's important historically, but as a white person, I can sort of be that shield between maybe people who are not endangered, but less safe in large crowds like protests. And so putting myself at the front lines and literally marching every single day, getting out there, donating to jail support, doing all those things. On June 2nd, a group of friends and I went to protest downtown, and my sister and I were not affected by this, but 3 of my closest friends were tear gassed and rubber bullets were flown at them. And I think that was sort of a big turning point for me, because obviously I knew that protests could turn dangerous, but to be at the front lines and see these people who are supposed to protect and serve, putting these community members who they're supposed to protect and serve in danger, really changed my outlook on just everything. So yeah, I think my relationship with my siblings. Yeah, so I have an older sister. She's 1.5 years older than me. Some of you might know her. Her name's Amelia. She's pretty great. I love her. We're thick as thieves. We're so close. I think it was difficult because she has always been very, very involved in the UU community. And obviously, as I talked about, there was a large period of time where I was not so involved. And so I think that put a little bit of a strain on our relationship, because I think she realized that, and she just sort of wanted me to get back into the swing of being part of a bigger community, and I was not ready. But now we're great. We're awesome. I love her.
Okay, anybody? Here's your chance. Any more questions? Here's a comment. Let's see. Read it. Want me to read it?
You can read it.
All
I
right.
just read it in chat, but you can read it out loud if you want to.
We're proud of you for the ways you exemplify deep commitment to our vision and mission. Thank you so much for what you shared.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so good to see everybody and share with you today.
And I also want to add my thanks, Lily, for sharing with us today. I'm so impressed with how honest you've been and how even vulnerable, but very courageous you've been in what you've told us. And you told it so clearly. We are really grateful that we had you here today.
Thank you.
Okay, so everybody stay tuned once again on the 4th Sunday in June. And we're very pleased that we had you here today, Lily. Thank you.